Welcome to OutSolve's OutRageous HR podcast. I'm your host, Catherine Boudreaux, account executive over here at OutSolve. And joining me today are Annette and Warren. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourselves?
Hey, Catherine. I'm Annette Alvarado, a team lead at OutSolve, and I've been with OutSolve for about 20 years now, and I work on the production side of the house.
And I'm Warren Johns Jr. I'm a Senior Director Operations Team Lead, and I've been at OutSolve for 6 years, but in the industry for 20 years. So we're ready to get started with this wonderful podcast here.
We're covering everything HR pros need to be planning for this next year. Warren, can you share a story about when you helped a client navigate some compliance changes that they maybe weren't expecting?
Of course. Thanks, Catherine. And essentially comes down to there's high turnover within an HR department. So it's hard to get somebody within a department to know exactly what they need to do in certain situations when compliance updates, changes, and that sort of thing. So one of my clients, we came up with a centralized email address within their organization that was called, it was compliance@company.com, where whoever was in the HR department was in that email box, and they received all the emails and updates from OutSolve, from me, whoever the case may be, for compliance updates and changes. And it really helped their organization because they knew somebody was looking at that email box constantly and somebody was going to be on point. Even if somebody within the HR team really didn't know who was supposed to be, they were all talking amongst themselves really about like who should do this, who should do that. So it really did help in the long run, and we're still doing it to this day.
Great.
So that nothing gets missed, basically. All of the information gets transitioned over to that one inbox. Different heads are kind of touching it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think that's
spot
important.
on.
Yeah.
Yep.
I had another situation too where we had a client that came to us that missed like state pay reporting. And last year we had a recent change where race was updated. And so I think it's important that that email, like you said in an example, is really great because they could have been ahead of the curve if they received the notification to say, okay, race and gender has now been updated. For state of California, for example, they updated their race to include Middle Eastern and North African, and that means that HR systems have to be adjusted to track for that information now. So I think that was a...
And on that note, I also brought up our blog, where you can go to outsolve.com/blog and subscribe, where we have a wealth of information, articles, sometimes daily. It seems like it's a lot of information, and a lot of clients love to keep updated on the changes that are occurring within the compliance environment. As we know, as we're about to talk about, 2025 has been a very interesting year in that department.
Yeah.
So.
And that blog is a good way to be proactive in your compliance, which leads us to our first question. So why does proactive compliance matter, especially given the constantly evolving landscape?
Well, I think it's important because we know that there are changes that come about and we need to be prepared for it. We don't want to be reactive, we want to be proactive so that, one, we can get in front of leadership, get in front of legal. There are so many different avenues that we need to prepare for in order to make adjustments for changes. Budget is one big thing. I think that organizations now need to be more prepared in advance so that they can get other parties involved, like legal. What do you think, Warren?
No, to that point, because we discussed about 2025 has been a rapid amount of change and updates in the regulatory environment. So having everybody involved, as I said, leadership, legal, everybody connected, especially setting that budget going forward. We don't know what 2026 might hold from federal government, state, local governments. They're really ramping up with a lot of reporting requirements and that sort of thing. So it really is important to make sure you are communicating within your organization. That's the biggest thing I think out of all of this is communication. Mm-hmm. Communication. If you don't have that communication, you have nothing. So to have it out there and be it on top of mind, especially now where we're about to be in the fourth quarter of 2025 and going into Q1 of 2026, you really want to make sure, you dot all your I's and cross all your T's in that department. So
I think what would be really helpful for a lot of organizations too is like having a compliance calendar, a schedule to show what is due, what is upcoming, what do we anticipate as far as changes that may occur? We've seen this year, and every year in the past, EEO1 fluctuates as far as the reporting due date. We were unsure if EEO1s were going to be required this year. So keeping on top of all of the different due dates, the regulatory changes, any kind of labor law changes, we want to get ahead of that before. Otherwise, if we wait to the last minute, things could be costly for an organization. There could be rush fees associated with last minute requirements or reporting. So anything that companies can do to be more proactive is going to benefit them.
So what changes or additional pressures do you anticipate coming in 2026?
That's a great question.
That's a great question, Catherine. If we only knew. That's like the $1 million question.
We needed the crystal
because
ball.
we need that crystal ball that's out there, because it is, like I'm saying, I keep repeating myself, but 2025 has been changes, seems like every other day. I mean, as we know, the current administration, President Trump, signing executive orders seems like every day about something. So you have to be on top of that to make sure it affects you, your organization, wherever the case may be. But also, I think the bigger thing now is really state and local requirements and updates and that sort of thing. It's really a case where they're starting to ramp it up to take the helm from the federal government. Now it's being localized to each state and municipality, even city of that thing, because we do city AAPs, we do state AAPs and that sort of thing. So it really is something where, again, communication of like what's out there, what is possible, what could happen, that sort of thing. Even at the federal government, they're talking about changing regulations and moving this and moving that. So it really is something that needs to be discussed and updated internally to make sure everybody within the organization knows what's going on from that perspective.
And I do think that we can probably be assured that I-9s audits are going to be on the uptick. I think, if there's anything that we can predict, we can see a lot of that happening. I mean, we already are.
Especially you see it in the budget proposal. I mean, they added billions of dollars to the department. I mean, they're the agencies that are in there, and they're, ramping up hiring. There's like, signing bonuses and that sort of thing for Border Patrol and that sort of thing. So it seems like I-9 is really going to ramp up, because that's a big focus of this administration is immigration. If you don't turn on the TV or the radio or anything, that's all they want to talk about. So that's a huge deal right now, especially with the budget that they're able to get with the enforcement and the workforce that they're going to be able to have to go after companies in those cases. And it really was recently I saw it was the Hyundai plant or something like that where they came in. So it's ramping up fairly quickly for the Trump administration.
Right.
Speaking of I-9s, that leads us nicely into our next question. Why is seasonal hiring a compliance risk if not handled correctly?
The seasonal adjustment for each company has their different periods where they have high volume hiring. It's important to make sure that each of those employees that come in have a proper I-9 filled out. It's, no issues, that sort of thing. There's no errors. That's a big issue with the, administration, that sort of thing. So it's pertinent to have a good system in place or a good product, wherever the case may be, for your I-9s to properly come through the system and make sure that they're going through and getting everything, dotting those I's, crossing those T's, and not having issues with that. Because in the event of an audit, I-9 audit comes through and you have a bunch of issues with the current I-9 process, it could be a fiasco because their fines are coming up. It gets more and more the more issues they find and that sort of thing. So it is an issue and something that you definitely want to stay on top of in the event that before you come upon your high volume hiring season, that you have a proper I-9 process in place.
So can you tell us a little bit more about what systems or tools should be in place before that hiring surge begins?
Most organizations have some sort of a online tool to process I-9s or new hires, and that's a great way to at least be prepared. We don't want to do this manual process of collecting I-9 paper forms that's so ancient. Some people still do it. We want to make sure that Because of the high volume, they're processed efficiently and none are getting missed. I think that's a huge problem with a lot of organizations, is being able to manage that high volume, high turnaround, because people are getting rehired. They all still need to get re-verified and go through that same process again. So OutSolve actually has a new I-9 user-friendly mobile full end-to-end service for our clients. It helps process new hires pretty quickly.
And on that note, you want to have a clear audit trail within that system and make sure somebody's on top of it to ensure that those I-9s are being collected and all information is there that you need and is properly vetted. And again, with the OutSolve system, it's essentially takes care of that for you because it's pretty much automated, mobile friendly. New hires get a text or an email with the information of what they need to fill out and that sort of thing. So I think it's a very good thing, especially during peak hiring months. Easily if you have a flood of hiring coming in and you're doing this manually, a lot of stuff can fall through the cracks. So it's very good to have an automated system where some goes into HRIS, bam, it goes out to that potential employee. They fill out the information and you don't have to worry about it, and everything's documented, everything's stored securely in the cloud, in the server and that sort of thing. So you have what you need in the event that, again, I-9 audit comes knocking at your door, you have everything there for you.
So how does the I-9 process become a little bit more complex when you have a high volume?
Extremely complex.
Yeah.
Because like I was referring to, it's when you have a lot of hiring coming through and you don't have a system in place or internal processes in place for that, then you might, miss an I-9, or it might, something might be stored differently. The information's not filled out properly because they're not being checked at, how they're supposed to be checked according to the laws and regulations of how those forms are supposed to be checked. So it can be extremely complex if you have a minimal amount of HR team members that are available to do this, which a lot of our clients, unfortunately have a small amount of internal help that they have. So if they had an automated system that can just do it and they don't have to worry about it, even the better. So that's why we really would push towards going to the new age with doing electronic, because you also e-verifies there and that sort of thing. So we highly recommend moving towards that type of system.
Well, and I think the biggest challenge too with high volume is the fact that there's so many people, and you have to get them e-verified within 3 days of hire. So we're working on a very short time frame for a lot of people to get through that whole I-9 process. I think that's the biggest challenge that most companies will have to face as far as processing I-9s go.
As we approach budget season, what should HR teams be including in their budget for 2026?
Definitely federal reporting, EEO-1 and vets for sure. We want to make sure that they are planning for those reports and budgeting to make sure that they're completed on time.
On top of that, I would say pay equity audits, especially at the state level. Because actually recently we had a client that actually the first time we received a letter from the state of Illinois informing this particular client that they might have pay disparities by job title, which is really interesting because it's the first time showing that they're actually looking at this and they're enforcing what the law says. So be on top of that, because they talked about pay disparities within the job title, but also asking for any additional information that can explain that away. And this was after the client submitted their report, got their certification, thought they were good. This was 8 months after that moment. So it is something where, you have to stay on top of things and that sort of thing. And what we talked about a little bit earlier about states taking up the helm and going forward with this, it seems like that's occurring at a fast and furious pace, because it's really state of Illinois, California is another one where they're ramping it up. So definitely pay equity analysis to make sure, not just for the company, which is something else you should be doing, but also for the data that's being submitted to these states. Like as in the case of the state of Illinois, it's for the employees in the state of Illinois, report to state of Illinois. So it's not your entire workforce, so they're really focusing on them. But some companies don't realize, we have to do analysis on this too, because what might be looked at and reviewed as the company-wide analysis is not necessarily the same result of what's being sent to a particular state. So definitely that's a big one. I think that's going to be ramping up here.
Compensation benchmarking as well is probably a really good thing to look at and include it in your budget for next year, ensuring that by job title and looking at the different ways that you can survey your workforce as far as the job titles and compensation goes. I think that's really important.
And then on top of that, at the federal level, with the executive order, our favorite one from January 21st earlier this year, is that certification requirement where you have illegal DEI. You make sure you have no illegal DEI, again, whatever that means, within your practices. So so what they call like DEI audits to make sure everything's above board and you won't have any issues, because now with the certification requirement, it's actually within contracts now that companies sign with the federal government, even subcontracts too. So as soon as you sign that paper, you're already saying, yes, we certify that we have no illegal DEI, and we're non-discrimination employer as well. So that's something else you want to make sure you are reviewing, especially any new federal contractors and that sort of thing. It is a new world, a new environment now. So definitely make sure you have a budget to make sure that all of that is what it needs to be.
Why does budgeting early matter to avoid last-minute panic buys, especially with the way that regulations have been changing?
Well, I think that we know for sure that if you're waiting to the last minute, it's going to cost a little bit more for organizations. We don't want to have that rush fee tacked on. If they can avoid it, that would be in their best interest, obviously. So if you're not prepared and you're not budgeting early, that means that there could come with any kinds of surprises, including additional costs.
Oh, especially, yes, and like audit situations over the years, how many clients have come with audit in hand and they have to pay an expedite fee and all this other, information. But it is more of like, hey, this could happen. We have to make sure everything is there. So we might as well get it up front. And it's, you talk about like an insurance policy. Like, let's just, hey, we need to be compliant. We're in the federal government business. So we have to make sure we're in compliance with everything, all the rules and regulations that are out there. So let's make sure we have this box checked in the event that the federal government does come knocking on your door.
So what should HR leaders be doing now to plan for compliance in 2026?
Annette alluded to it earlier, of a compliance review for a calendar. It's like, all right, here we are.
Exactly.
2026 is coming up. What needs to be completed? Like we know EO1 reports, FES 4212, of course, there. Who knows what new regulations and updates might come from all of this? So making sure you're reviewing all that, and again, you're communicating internally to make sure we need to do this, we need to do that, and who is going to take care of that. And that's why here at OutSolve, we're a good partner, because a lot of that can be just like, oh, OutSolve takes care of that, which, happens a lot. So, we're there to help you in every step of the way, and also keep you updated when anything changes within any rules or regulations from the federal government or state or local governments as well.
Mm-hmm. All right, Annette and Warren, I'm going to hit you with some rapid fire questions. Annette, what is your top piece of advice for HR professionals?
Be proactive and get with legal.
Warren, where can HR professionals go to get help?
OutSolve, of course. We're here to take care of all your compliance needs.
How does OutSolve help organizations prepare for compliance success?
Gives our clients peace of mind.
All right, as we wrap up, do you have any final reminders for us?
Yes, start building your 2026 roadmap now. Do not wait till January Q1 or anything like that. Do it now.
Don't wait for audits or new laws to react. Be proactive.
Don't budget just for tools, but for expertise and audit protection and all of the fun things that we do in the compliance world.
Final reminders. OutSolve offers scalable solutions for all of our client needs.
Thanks so much, Annette and Warren. If you're ready to start planning your 2026 compliance roadmap, OutSolve is here to help. We offer digital I-9 solutions with trained authorized reps, pay equity audits and compensation benchmarking, federal contractor compliance requirement assistance for things like EEO1s, VETS 4212, Section 503, and VEVR reporting. Visit OutSolve.com to explore our 2026 planning tools, audit checklist, and expert guidance today. Thanks so much for joining us today on OutRageous HR. We'll see you next time.